The Galactic Academy's shuttle touched down with a gentle hum on the forest floor of Kepler 442b. Through the reinforced windows, 23 students from various species peered nervously at the dense woodland that stretched endlessly in every direction. Ancient trees towered overhead, their massive trunks disappearing into a canopy so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight managed to penetrate to the forest floor below. Professor Zeeth Ka, a tall, crystalline being from the Zephyrian system, stood at the front of the shuttle with his datapad glowing softly. His translucent skin shifted through various shades of blue as he addressed the mixed group of students. "Today marks your final survival assessment," he announced, his voice carrying the melodic tones typical of his species. "You will be divided into groups of 4, and must survive in this wilderness for 72 standard hours, using only basic supplies." Marcus Chen, the only human in the class, adjusted his simple backpack and looked around at his fellow students. At 19, he was considered young even by human standards, but his calm demeanor stood out among the increasingly anxious aliens around him. His dark hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and his brown eyes held a steady confidence that seemed out of place given the circumstances. "The forest of Kepler 442b presents unique challenges," Professor Zeeth Ka continued, his skin now shifting to a warning shade of orange. "The local wildlife includes several predatory species, the weather can change rapidly, and the plant life contains both nutritious and highly toxic varieties. Your survival depends entirely on your ability to work together and apply the theoretical knowledge you have gained throughout this semester." A nervous chittering arose from Zix-34, a small, insect-like klaxon whose compound eyes were darting frantically between the trees. Her thin, segmented arms trembled as she clutched her regulation survival kit. "Professor, the atmospheric readings show elevated humidity levels and potential for precipitation. My species requires specific environmental conditions to maintain proper respiratory function." Next to her, Corveth, a large reptilian saurian, flicked his forked tongue anxiously. His scales, normally a vibrant green, had dulled to a muddy brown color that indicated extreme stress among his kind. "The vegetation density will make it impossible to establish a proper perimeter," he growled, his deep voice rumbling with concern. "How can we protect ourselves from nocturnal predators without clear sight lines?" The third member of their assigned group was Lyra, a graceful, ethereal being from the celestial rings of Andromeda. Her silver skin seemed to glow with an inner light, and her large, luminous eyes reflected her growing panic. "I have never been separated from technological assistance for more than a few hours," she whispered, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "My people have not needed to survive in primitive conditions for over 10,000 years." Marcus listened to his teammates' concerns with growing understanding. Throughout their months of theoretical study, he had noticed how different species approached survival from vastly different perspectives. Most galactic civilizations had evolved beyond the need for primitive survival skills thousands of years ago. They relied on advanced technology, controlled environments, and sophisticated support systems that had been standard across the galaxy for millennia. "Groups will be assigned randomly," Professor Zeeth Ka announced, consulting his datapad. The blue glow intensified as he read the names. "Team 7 will consist of Zix-34 of Klaxon Prime, Corveth of Saurus Major, Lyra of the Celestial Rings, and Marcus Chen of Earth." The 3 aliens exchanged glances that Marcus interpreted as somewhere between resignation and despair. He had grown accustomed to being viewed as the primitive member of any group, coming from a species that had only achieved interstellar travel within the last century. Most of his classmates came from civilizations that had been spacefaring for tens of thousands of years. Professor Zeeth Ka distributed the survival kits basic packages containing a small emergency shelter, water purification tablets, a basic first aid supply, and a few high-energy food bars. Remember, these supplies are meant to last only 24 hours in emergency situations. You must find or create everything else you need to survive the full assessment period. As the groups dispersed into different sections of the forest, Marcus found himself leading his nervous teammates deeper into the woods. The sounds of the other groups faded quickly, replaced by the natural symphony of the alien forest. Strange bird-like creatures called out from high in the canopy, while small rustling sounds suggested the presence of various ground-dwelling animals. "We should establish a base camp near water," Marcus suggested, shouldering his pack and looking around thoughtfully. "Sound travels differently in dense forest, but I can hear what might be running water in that direction." Zix-34's antennae twitched frantically. "How can you possibly determine water location through auditory analysis alone? The acoustic interference from vegetation and animal sounds would make such detection impossible without proper equipment." "Experience," Marcus replied simply, starting to walk in the direction he had indicated. After a moment of hesitation, his teammates followed, having no better alternative to suggest. As they moved through the forest, Marcus noticed things his companions completely missed. He pointed out edible berries growing on certain bushes, identified animal tracks in the soft earth, and noted which trees might provide suitable materials for shelter construction. His knowledge seemed to come from some deep, instinctive understanding rather than academic study. "How do you know these things?" Lyra asked, her musical voice filled with wonder as Marcus knelt to examine a set of tracks near a fallen log. "Our survival course covered basic theoretical principles, but you seem to possess practical knowledge that was never taught." Marcus paused his examination of the tracks, which belonged to some sort of deer-like creature based on their size and spacing. On Earth, these skills aren't theoretical. Many humans still practice them regularly. "I grew up spending summers with my grandfather in the wilderness areas of North America. He taught me to hunt, fish, build shelters, and live off the land." Corveth's tongue flicked out nervously. "Your species still engages in primitive survival activities voluntarily, even when advanced shelter and food production are available?" "Some do," Marcus nodded, standing up and brushing dirt from his hands. "We call it camping, hunting, hiking, bushcraft. Many humans find it relaxing or challenging. Others do it to stay connected to our ancestral ways of life." The concept seemed almost incomprehensible to his teammates. Their species had moved beyond such primitive activities so long ago that the knowledge had been completely lost. They lived in climate-controlled cities, ate food produced in sterile facilities, and had no experience with natural environments beyond carefully maintained parks and recreational areas. After another 20 minutes of walking, the sound Marcus had detected proved accurate. They emerged into a small clearing where a clear stream bubbled over smooth stones, creating a pleasant gurgling sound. The area was partially sheltered by overhanging rocks and surrounded by trees that would provide both protection and building materials. "This location offers multiple advantages," Marcus explained, setting down his pack and surveying the area with an experienced eye. "Fresh water source, natural windbreak from those rocks, plenty of building materials, and good drainage in case of rain." His teammates looked around the clearing with much less enthusiasm. To them, it appeared to be nothing more than a small opening in an endless, hostile wilderness. They saw no shelter, no food sources, no protection from the elements or potential predators. "Where exactly are we supposed to sleep?" Zix-34 asked, her voice rising to nearly panic levels. "The ground is covered with organic debris and potentially harmful microorganisms. The exposure to elements will compromise our health within hours." "We'll build shelter," Marcus replied matter-of-factly, already beginning to examine nearby trees for suitable characteristics. "Something weatherproof, elevated off the ground, and large enough for all four of us." Lyra's luminous eyes widened in disbelief. Build shelter? From what materials? With what tools? Our survival kits contain only basic emergency supplies. Marcus smiled, the first truly relaxed expression he had shown since the assessment began. From the forest itself, trees, branches, leaves, vines, mud, stones. As for tools, we have our hands, our intelligence, and creativity. He walked over to a young tree about 6 inches in diameter and wrapped his arms around it, testing its flexibility and strength. This species appears similar to earth birch trees. The wood is strong but flexible, and the bark has waterproof properties. Without warning, Marcus began to climb the tree with fluid, practiced movements that left his teammates staring in amazement. He moved up the trunk with the ease of someone who had been climbing trees since childhood, using natural hand and footholds that were invisible to the watching aliens. "What is he doing?" Corveth rumbled, his scales shifting to an alarmed shade of yellow. "That behavior appears extremely dangerous. If he falls from that height, he could sustain serious injury." From 30 feet up in the tree, Marcus called down, "I'm checking the strength of these branches and looking for the best trees to use for our shelter. The canopy up here is perfect. We can build something elevated that will be safe from ground predators and protected from rain." Zix 34's antennae were practically vibrating with anxiety. "Elevated shelter? You mean to construct something in the trees? That's impossible without proper engineering equipment and structural analysis." Marcus swung easily from one branch to another, testing their load-bearing capacity and examining the spacing between trees. To his alien teammates below, he appeared to be defying gravity itself, moving through the canopy with an agility that seemed almost supernatural. "Actually," he called down, his voice filled with growing excitement, "this is even better than I thought. These trees are perfectly positioned, and the branches are strong enough to support significant weight. We're not just going to build a shelter, we're going to build a treehouse." The word treehouse had no direct translation in any of his teammates' languages, and even the universal translator seemed to struggle with the concept. They could only watch in bewilderment as their supposedly primitive human teammate began to describe a plan that sounded like nothing they had ever imagined. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus descended from the trees and began to gather materials with systematic efficiency. He showed his teammates how to identify suitable branches, how to test wood for strength and flexibility, and how to gather the various natural materials they would need for construction. Despite their initial skepticism and fear, the 3 aliens found themselves drawn into the project. There was something infectious about Marcus's confidence and enthusiasm that began to override their panic. They started to work together, following his guidance and gradually learning to see the forest not as a hostile environment, but as a source of everything they needed to survive. As the sun began to set through the canopy above, casting long shadows across their clearing, they had gathered an impressive pile of building materials. Marcus had taught them to strip bark for rope making, select stones for tool making, and identify plants that could provide both food and medicine. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, looking up at the trees with the satisfaction of an architect surveying a construction site, "we begin building. By tomorrow night, we'll have the most comfortable shelter anyone has ever constructed for a survival test." His teammates looked at their human companion with a mixture of amazement and newfound respect. They were beginning to understand that what they had dismissed as primitive knowledge was actually sophisticated expertise that had been refined over thousands of generations of human survival. The forest no longer seemed quite so threatening with Marcus as their guide, but they were about to discover that surviving in the wilderness was only the beginning of the challenges they would face. Dawn broke over the forest canopy with a symphony of alien bird calls that gradually woke the 4 students huddled in their emergency shelter. The basic survival tent had barely accommodated all of them. and none of the aliens had slept well on the hard ground. Marcus, however, appeared refreshed and energetic as he emerged from the cramped space and began assessing the morning conditions. "Weather looks good for construction," he announced, studying the sky visible through gaps in the canopy. "No rain clouds, minimal wind, and the temperature should be comfortable for working." Zix-34 emerged from the tent looking thoroughly miserable, her normally vibrant chitin having dulled to a sickly gray color. "I have calculated the probability of successfully constructing an elevated shelter using only organic materials and primitive techniques," she chittered weakly. "The structural engineering challenges alone make the project virtually impossible." Corveth stretched his massive frame and winced as his joints popped. His scales had taken on a mottled pattern that indicated both discomfort and skepticism. Even if construction were possible, the time required would extend far beyond our survival assessment period. We should focus on basic shelter improvement and food procurement. Lyra floated near the edge of the clearing, her usual ethereal glow significantly dimmed by anxiety and fatigue. "My energy reserves are depleting faster than anticipated in this environment. I require either technological supplementation or return to controlled atmospheric conditions within the next 24 hours. Marcus listened to his teammates' concerns while conducting what appeared to be a systematic survey of their campsite. He was checking the wind direction, examining the stream flow, and making mental notes about the movement patterns of local wildlife. His calm competence stood in stark contrast to the growing desperation of his companions. "The beauty of a treehouse," Marcus explained, beginning to lay out branches in specific patterns, "is that it solves multiple problems simultaneously. Elevation protects us from ground predators and flooding. Tree canopy provides natural temperature regulation and rain protection. The construction process itself will generate body heat and provide purposeful activity to maintain morale." He picked up a long, straight branch and began demonstrating how to strip away smaller twigs and bark to create a smooth building beam. Plus, the psychological benefit of having a proper shelter dramatically improves survival rates. When people feel secure in their environment, they make better decisions and work more effectively as a team. Despite their doubts, the three aliens found themselves drawn to watch Marcus work. His movements were efficient and purposeful, each action building toward a larger plan that was becoming clearer with every step. He had obviously done this type of construction before, many times. "First step is creating our main support structure," Marcus said, selecting several sturdy branches and beginning to lash them together with strips of bark he had prepared the previous evening. "These will form the primary frame that connects between trees." He demonstrated the rope-making technique he had learned from his grandfather, showing how to twist and braid bark fibers to create surprisingly strong cordage. The process required patience and practice, but even Zix-34's delicate manipulator arms proved capable of producing usable rope after a few attempts. "Your species possesses remarkable manual dexterity," Lyra observed with growing interest as she watched Marcus's hands work. "The precision and strength required for this construction technique exceeds what most galactic species could achieve." "Humans evolved as tool users," Marcus replied, continuing his demonstration. "Our hands developed specifically for gripping, manipulating objects, and creating things. Most of our early survival depended on our ability to make tools and build shelters." As the morning progressed, Marcus guided his teammates through the process of preparing construction materials. He taught them to evaluate wood quality by examining grain patterns, to test strength by applying controlled stress, and to select pieces based on their intended function in the overall structure. Corveth discovered that his natural strength made him excellent at breaking larger branches to appropriate sizes, while Zix-34's precision and attention to detail proved valuable for creating uniform rope sections. Lyra's natural grace and light weight made her surprisingly effective at reaching high branches and testing connection points. "The key principle," Marcus explained as he began the actual assembly process, is distributing weight and stress across multiple connection points. No single joint or beam bears too much load, so the entire structure becomes stronger than any individual component. He had identified 3 large trees that formed a natural triangle about 15 feet apart. The plan was to create a triangular platform suspended between these anchor points, with the main living space elevated approximately 12 feet above the ground. The construction process proved more complex than his teammates had imagined. Each joint required careful measurement and precise cutting to ensure proper fit. The rope connections needed to be exactly tight enough to provide structural integrity without cutting into the wood and weakening the joints. This level of engineering sophistication rivals what our species achieved during our early technological development phase, Corveth admitted grudgingly as he helped Marcus position a major support beam. The mathematical calculations required for proper load distribution are quite advanced. It's not really mathematical, Marcus replied, testing the beam's stability with his full weight. It's more like intuitive understanding developed through generations of practice. Humans have been building tree shelters for tens of thousands of years. The knowledge gets passed down from parent to child, teacher to student. By midday, the basic platform had taken shape. 3 primary support beams connected the anchor trees, with a network of crossbeams creating a stable foundation. The structure was already beginning to resemble something that could actually support human weight. Marcus climbed up to test the platform's stability, bouncing gently to check for flex or weak points. "Perfect," he announced with satisfaction. "This will easily support all 4 of us, plus our gear. Now we start building the walls and roof." His teammates were beginning to see the project in a new light. What had seemed impossible that morning was clearly achievable with proper technique and systematic approach. More importantly, they were discovering capabilities within themselves that they had never suspected. "I have never engaged in manual construction activities before," Lyra admitted as she helped weave smaller branches into wall panels. "My people consider physical labor to be primitive and unnecessary, but this process is surprisingly satisfying." Zix-34 was creating intricate joint connections with a precision that amazed even Marcus. "The problem-solving aspects are intellectually stimulating," she chittered with growing enthusiasm. "Each connection point presents unique engineering challenges that require creative solutions." As the afternoon progressed, the treehouse continued to grow. Walls began to rise around the platform, creating enclosed space that would provide protection from wind and rain. Marcus showed his teammates how to weave branches together to create solid panels, how to overlap materials for waterproofing, and how to design ventilation openings that would maintain air circulation without compromising security. The work was physically demanding, requiring constant climbing, lifting, and manipulation of heavy materials. But the aliens discovered that their bodies were more capable than they had realized. Corveth's reptilian strength made him an ideal heavy-lifting partner, while Zix-34's multiple arms allowed her to work on complex assemblies that would have challenged human dexterity. This collaborative approach to survival is fascinating from a sociological perspective, Lyra observed as she helped Marcus install roof supports. Most galactic species approach challenges through technological solutions or individual specialization, but this method requires integrated teamwork and shared skill development. Marcus paused his work to look around at his teammates with genuine pride. That's exactly right. Human survival has always been based on community cooperation. We share knowledge, divide labor based on individual strengths, and support each other through difficult challenges. By late afternoon, the treehouse had evolved into an impressive structure that would have been remarkable even by professional standards. The platform was solid and spacious, the walls provided excellent protection, and the roof design would shed rain while maintaining internal air circulation. But Marcus wasn't finished. He had plans for additional features that would transform their shelter from basic protection into genuinely comfortable living space. He began constructing elevated storage areas, sleeping platforms at different levels, and even a small cooking area with proper ventilation for fire safety. "You are creating multiple specialized zones within a single structure," Corveth observed with amazement. This level of spatial organization exceeds the complexity of many modern habitat designs. "Functionality follows from understanding how people actually live," Marcus replied, installing a clever system of pulleys that would allow them to raise supplies from ground level without climbing down. Every culture develops these kinds of practical solutions over time. As evening approached, the three aliens found themselves looking forward to spending the night in their new treehouse rather than dreading another uncomfortable night on the ground. The structure felt solid, secure, and genuinely welcoming, a remarkable transformation from the hostile wilderness that had terrified them just 24 hours earlier. Marcus completed the final roof sections as the sun began setting through the canopy. "Tomorrow we'll add the finishing touches and focus on food procurement and water storage systems. But tonight, we sleep like kings." As they climbed up into their elevated shelter for the first time, the aliens experienced a profound shift in perspective. They were no longer helpless survivors struggling against a hostile environment. They had become capable builders who had created something remarkable through cooperation, determination, and human ingenuity. But their greatest challenges still lay ahead, and they were about to discover that building the treehouse was only the beginning of what Marcus could accomplish in the wilderness. The second morning in the forest brought unexpected challenges that would test not only their survival skills, but also the growing bond between the unlikely teammates. Marcus was awakened before dawn by an unusual sound that his wilderness training had taught him to recognize immediately: the low, rumbling growl of a large predator moving through the underbrush below their treehouse. He remained perfectly still, listening carefully to determine the creature's size, distance, and behavior patterns. His three alien teammates were still sleeping peacefully in the elevated shelter, unaware of the potential danger prowling beneath them. The growling continued for several minutes, occasionally punctuated by sniffing sounds as the creature investigated their campsite. When the sounds finally faded into the distance, Marcus quietly climbed down from the treehouse to examine the evidence. Large paw prints in the soft earth around their water source told a clear story. A predator, roughly the size of an earth bear, had spent considerable time investigating their scent trail and examining their construction materials. "We have visitors," Marcus announced calmly when his teammates began stirring in the treehouse above. "Something large and carnivorous checked us out during the night. The good news is that our elevation kept us completely safe." Zix-34's antennae immediately began twitching with alarm as she peered down at the paw prints Marcus was indicating. "Predator encounter protocols require immediate evacuation to secure location and emergency beacon activation," she chittered frantically. "Primitive shelter construction provides insufficient protection against apex predators." Corveth's scales shifted to deep red warning colors as he examined the evidence with his keen reptilian senses. The scent markings indicate a territorial animal of significant size and aggression. Standard survival doctrine mandates retreat to avoid potential conflict. Lyra's ethereal glow dimmed to barely visible levels as panic threatened to overwhelm her delicate constitution. "My species has no natural defenses against physical predators. I require technological protection or immediate extraction from this environment." Marcus studied the tracks and scent markings with the calm, analytical approach his grandfather had taught him. "Actually, this is good news," he said, surprising his terrified teammates. "The animal investigated, but didn't attempt to climb or damage our structure. It respected our position and moved on. That means we've established effective territorial boundaries." The concept seemed incomprehensible to the three aliens, who came from species that had eliminated dangerous wildlife from their worlds millennia ago. The idea of coexisting with predators rather than simply avoiding or eliminating them was completely foreign to their understanding. "You're suggesting we remain in an area with confirmed predator presence?" Corveth asked incredulously. "That violates every basic survival principle taught in galactic safety protocols." Marcus began preparing breakfast using edible plants he had gathered the previous day, his movements calm and confident despite the predator encounter. "The key is understanding predator behavior and responding appropriately. This animal investigated a new scent and structure in its territory, determined we weren't a threat or easy prey, and continued its normal hunting pattern. He demonstrated how to identify and prepare various forest plants that could provide nutrition and energy. His knowledge seemed encyclopedic, covering not only which plants were safe to eat, but also how to process them for maximum nutritional benefit, and how to combine different species for balanced meals. "How do you possess such comprehensive botanical knowledge?" Lyra asked with growing amazement, as Marcus prepared what appeared to be a genuinely appetizing meal from materials that had seemed completely inedible to her alien perception. "Survival education is part of human culture," Marcus replied, "using heated stones to cook root vegetables and prepare herbal tea from forest leaves. We learn these skills not just for emergencies, but as a way of connecting with our natural environment and understanding our place in the ecosystem." As they shared breakfast in their elevated treehouse, the aliens began to understand that Marcus's approach to wilderness survival was fundamentally different from anything they had encountered. Rather than simply enduring hostile conditions until rescue arrived, he was actively thriving in the forest environment. "Today we'll complete our shelter improvements and establish sustainable resource procurement systems," Marcus announced, outlining plans that went far beyond basic survival requirements. "By tonight we'll have running water, food storage, waste management, and early warning systems for predator detection." The scope of his plans astonished his teammates. They had been focused on simply surviving until the assessment period ended, but Marcus was designing systems that could support long-term habitation. His approach suggested that humans viewed wilderness not as a hostile environment to be endured, but as a complex resource system to be understood and utilized. Throughout the morning, Marcus taught his teammates increasingly sophisticated wilderness techniques. He showed them how to construct water filtration systems using sand, charcoal, and cloth. He demonstrated food preservation methods using smoking, drying, and natural refrigeration techniques. He even began building early warning systems using strategically placed sticks and leaves that would alert them to approaching animals. "These techniques represent thousands of years of accumulated human knowledge," Marcus explained as he taught Zix-34 how to weave baskets for food storage. "Every generation adds improvements and refinements based on their experiences and discoveries." Corveth was learning to identify edible insects and small animals that could provide protein supplements to their plant-based diet. His natural hunting instincts, suppressed by millennia of civilized living, began to reassert themselves under Marcus's guidance. "I am discovering predatory capabilities within myself that I never suspected existed," he admitted with amazement as he successfully trapped a rabbit-like creature using techniques Marcus had taught him. "My species' ancient hunting heritage appears to be merely dormant, not extinct." Lyra was developing an unexpected talent for food preparation and meal planning. Her natural grace and attention to detail made her excellent at preparing complex dishes from forest ingredients. More importantly, she was learning to draw energy from the natural environment rather than relying solely on technological supplementation. "The electromagnetic fields of living plants appear to provide subtle energy enhancement that I had never experienced," she mused as she gathered herbs for their afternoon meal. "Perhaps technological isolation has disconnected my people from beneficial natural energy sources." By midday, Their treehouse had evolved into something resembling a comfortable wilderness home rather than a basic survival shelter. Marcus had added ingenious features, including a rainwater collection system, elevated food storage that protected their supplies from animals, and even a primitive but effective latrine system that maintained sanitation while preserving the natural environment. The transformation in his teammates was equally remarkable. The three aliens who had been paralyzed by terror just 2 days earlier were now working confidently alongside Marcus to improve their living situation. They had discovered capabilities within themselves that their advanced civilizations had never required them to develop. This collaborative problem-solving approach is revolutionizing my understanding of survival dynamics, Zix-34 observed, as she completed an intricate rope and pulley system that Marcus had designed for raising heavy materials to their elevated platform. Individual specialization combined with knowledge sharing produces exponentially superior results compared to either isolated effort or technological dependence. As afternoon progressed toward evening, they received an unexpected visit that would provide the ultimate test of their newfound confidence and capabilities. The sound of approaching voices through the forest indicated that another survival team was in trouble and heading toward their location. Team 3 emerged into their clearing in a state of obvious distress. The group consisted of 4 aliens from different species, all of whom appeared exhausted, hungry, and on the verge of panic. Their emergency shelter had been damaged by the previous night's predator encounter, their food supplies had been contaminated by improper storage, and one team member was showing signs of dehydration and exposure. "Emergency assistance required," gasped Vorth, a tall, thin humanoid from the Centauri system whose normally blue skin had taken on a sickly green pallor. "Our shelter failed during nocturnal predator encounter. Food supplies compromised. Medical attention needed for team member suffering environmental exposure." His teammates were in equally poor condition. Their basic survival equipment had proved inadequate for the forest environment, and their lack of practical wilderness knowledge had led to a cascade of problems that threatened to end their assessment in failure or worse. Marcus immediately shifted into leadership mode, assessing the newcomer's condition and organizing his own teammates to provide assistance. Corveth: "Help me get their injured teammate up to the treehouse. Lyra, prepare hot food and clean water. Zix-34, gather medical supplies and extra bedding materials." The efficiency and coordination of Team 7 amazed the struggling survivors. Within minutes, they found themselves being helped up into an impressive elevated shelter that seemed impossibly sophisticated for primitive construction techniques. "How did you construct this facility?" asked Nira, a feathered avian whose normally pristine plumage was now bedraggled and dirty. "The structural complexity exceeds anything we imagined possible using only forest materials." Marcus was already examining the injured alien, applying wilderness first aid techniques to treat exposure and dehydration. "Teamwork, proper planning, and understanding how to work with natural materials rather than against them," he replied, preparing a medicinal tea from forest plants. As evening fell, the expanded group of 8 students shared a substantial meal prepared entirely from forest resources. The newcomers watched in amazement as Marcus's original teammates demonstrated the various skills they had learned over the past 2 days. "Your team has achieved something remarkable here," Vorth admitted as he recovered his strength in the warm, secure environment of the treehouse. "We approached this assessment as an ordeal to be endured, but you have created a genuine living space that surpasses many technological accommodations." Professor Zithka's voice suddenly echoed through the forest as the assessment period officially ended. "All teams report to the shuttle landing zone for evaluation and extraction." As the 8 students climbed down from the treehouse and began the trek back to the pickup point, the contrast between Team 7 and the other groups became increasingly apparent. Marcus's teammates moved with confidence and energy, carrying surplus food supplies and demonstrating wilderness skills that amazed their classmates. The theoretical impossibility of your achievements will require comprehensive analysis, Professor Zithka observed as he examined Marcus's detailed documentation of their construction techniques and survival systems. Standard galactic survival protocols indicated that primitive shelter construction and resource procurement were inadequate for extended wilderness habitation. Marcus smiled as he looked back toward the forest, where their remarkable treehouse still stood among the trees. Sometimes the old ways work better than new technology, Professor. And sometimes the most important survival skill is knowing how to work together as a team. The shuttle lifted off from Kepler 442b, carrying 8 students who had learned far more than basic survival skills during their 3 days in the wilderness. They had discovered the power of human ingenuity, the importance of practical knowledge passed down through generations, and the incredible things that could be achieved when different species worked together toward common goals. As they flew back toward the Galactic Academy, Zix-34, Corvette, and Lyra realized that their human teammate had given them something far more valuable than passing grades on a survival assessment. He had shown them capabilities within themselves that they never knew existed, and opened their eyes to the sophisticated wisdom contained within supposedly primitive human knowledge. The treehouse remained in the forest long after their departure, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of cooperation that would puzzle xenoarchaeologists for generations to come.